not coverage would be good to have too. So thank you.
I think that's great. I think either will work. I think having a map without coverage will serve the same purpose. So I think we also need to define coverage also in terms of QoS and whatnot, in terms of, you know, the quality move into a requirement for higher bandwidth. But for now, just minimal coverage and where we don't have is would be a great start. So I think that would be a starting point, Bert, at least if we can say, let's make that a milestone for us to achieve. And that'll set us forward on doing what Christine said about putting together a coordinated, you know, framework.
Yeah, Christina, did you have your hand raised?
I did have my hand raised. I like that idea. I just wanted to more in sort of organizing how this data and information is collected, because that's the only approach we've been taking. So thanks for that suggestion, because when we're trying to build out telehealth programs and people experience it, they'll tell us, well, it didn't work here because this household specifically didn't have reliable connectivity, or this community didn't have reliable connectivity. So what I wanted to put out there is, who should we report that to? You know, we've just kind of been collecting it here and there. It's unorganized. So I think that gives us an opportunity in this group, Bert. I just wanted to just take that idea one step further and figure out, you know, who will collect that data to put on the map in terms of our gap map.
That's a very good point. So that's just another angle. That can be another layer that we can add to it, is from a consumer standpoint, right? What kind of quality or what your experience is. And if we were to regress that data with the other data that, you know, was suggested, we'd have a really good picture of what you know, a roadmap for ourselves.
So, you know, what I would like to do is give, you know, maybe give Lisa or Jeremy from BCCA a chance to talk a little bit, because they have, you know, an effort to kind of identify areas that don't have internet access, and maybe they can kind of give us a sense of where that program is.
Okay. I think 2 years ago, Jeremy, you could correct me if I'm wrong, but we did send out a no internet mapping tool, and that could be found on our website. We don't have that many people providing info, but that's already up on our site, and it was launched about 2 years ago. We're just about to launch more formally an internet speed mapping tool. So we did it internally within the DCCA. We have got about 80 participants who are basically, we took this advantage of this time when we were, you know, working from home and teleworking. So Jeremy was great at putting this device together. It's a crowdsourcing information about what actual speeds are being received when you're at home. So if you go on our website, on CATV website, DCCA, I think CATV/broadband, you'll see some of the tools that were already developed and put in. And one of it is the speed mapping, internet speed tool. And as I said, we just did it internally at first, and we'll be launching it sometime real soon, so that, you know, we'll send it out to our list of stakeholders, and then they could send it out to other people that are interested, and we'll also tweet it out and all that. So we're going to do that quite soon. Another thing that people might be interested in was that for the last 2 years, we've collected data from Ookla on speed in Hawaii. So we have at least 2 years of data on speeds, and I think millions of speeds, I think, Jeremy. So that's on our website as well. So I think, you know, some effort is made there, and we're working on our response to Mel. So we'll send everything together and send it to Mel, because he had some questions about Kauai. So we're working on that. But I think if you go to our site, there are some information. It might not be as complete as everyone, but the reason why we did with the crowdsourcing is because we wanted to not come across issues with proprietary, you know, sensitive data. So there are efforts to build that crowdsourcing information, you know, but at the same time, when you look at the speed mapping tool, you also have to realize, you know, that the issue is adoption as well, because I'm sure those people are experiencing low broadband, but the thing is, like, they're choosing to purchase that speed as opposed to higher speeds that might be available from the providers too. So we have to take these information with that caveat as well. So those are some things, and a plug for our site, for our broadband site. But as I said, we'll be sending out that internet speed tool quite soon. And right now, as I said,
So Lisa.
Huh?
Oh, I just sorry to interrupt. Could you tell us? I mean, like, you know, with the no internet service map, and then it sort of speaks to what Mel is bringing up.
Right.
How is it? How do people participate in that? And is it actively being, let's say, from a crowdsourced data standpoint, is it actively being promoted?
It's not. Well, I mean, it was launched. A number of people are aware of it. We didn't get that many hits, but basically people would go, maybe say, oh, this place has no internet. So we do have a few takers. As I said, it's not as much, but you know, we're trying to get the crowdsourced information as much as possible, because that is public information that we can share with everybody.
Right. Okay.
Well, that's a good, yeah, that's a good approach. I guess we have a number of approaches. So I guess, Bert, if we say we want to commit ourselves to this, I think we can find an answer. I would say not only no internet service, but maybe low internet service. I know Senator English often has problems, you know, connecting when he's up country. And so I think that is a viable approach.
Right, so that's the second tool that we are going to launch soon, where people can report the service that they're receiving. So if you go on our site, you'll see red dots, which means less than 10. And then if you go to other sites, you see the green, dark green, you'll see 300 plus. That's of course, you know, goes up to 1 gig. So I think if people could, you know, are interested, you guys should look at that site. As I said, we have about 80 from the DCCA who went on. So you'll see the various dots over there. And the larger the circle, the more people in that area have experienced positive, speeds or high speeds. So I think
that's a very good approach, Lisa. Maybe I'll do it, and Bert, I can go back with Lisa and Jeremy, and then maybe we can report back next Tuesday of some following meeting to talk about whether this would be a viable solution that we can all get behind. Because we're going to probably need more support and funding by way of marketing, for example, to get the public educated on this site so that we have better crowdsourcing information. So I think we first got to determine what vehicle we use. We got to agree, and then we can move forward. If that sounds good, then I'll follow up on that, Bert.
Yeah. No, that sounds great. Again, it's good to use you know, programs and processes that are already in place, and how can we help improve that? And again, this is, like Lisa said, this has been going on for a couple of years, but you know, if we can somehow recharge it and get more data, since we're all out there actively looking, I think it would be a good thing. So great. So anyway, I think there's going to be further discussion about, you know, how do we not only do a strategic plan and plans for the 2021 session, but also how do we get some of these elements of the framework, and data and mapping is very important to that. So moving on to the next topic of conversation, I took the advice of Senate President and reaching out to some of the counties, and I wanted to, you know, thanks to Maui County for joining us. We have Aaron and Sandy on the call. So Sandy, do you want to say you know, some quick words about what's happening on Maui in terms of, you know, broadband?
Bert, I think he had to step away for a second, but he did say he's going to come back, so he'll be able to chime in a little bit.
Okay. We can
Sorry,
sort of maybe.
I just sat back down. At the mayor real quick. Were you talking about me?
Yes, yes. We got you on the spot here. Spotlight's on you. Want to find out like what's the County of Maui doing with broadband?
As you know, as I mentioned earlier, we are working on a mobile broadband system to be able to get out to the rural communities. And we've been working with trying to get fiber, throughout our community. We appreciate everybody's support in that, and you probably have more information than I do. There was a push earlier to have another landing site on Maui because right now we are challenged. If our landing site does go down, the wouldn't have any connectivity. So that's a really important factor that we have to deal with in the future. No, right now it's just a matter of trying to get back involved. I myself am getting back involved in this and appreciate participate in here and kind of catch up. So
Sandy.
So Sandy,
yeah.
Go ahead, Jeannie.
Yeah, Sandy. So in terms of any broadband initiatives, etc., who should we talk to? Is it you or Public Works, or who's kind of the lead?
So I guess right now it'd be me. The mobile one is the Department of Transportation is an actual project that they're using their CARES Act money for. They had received some FTA money, and so they're using that. We also have some efforts, within our own IT services division, which is a part of the Department of Management, so they're directly under me. And then we also have been working with Spectrum on providing Wi-Fi access in county facilities. So we put out an RFP about a year or so ago, and they've been working on installing Wi-Fi in our community centers. And so they've
perfect.
provided that for, I think we're at about 4 or 5 facilities right now, and then COVID came, so we're getting them restarted again. We plan on utilizing either them or our own IT to provide Wi-Fi access at county facilities throughout our 3 islands. So that's coming along as well. So yeah, and that's in my office.
Okay, great.
Senate President has his hand raised, so give him the floor.
Yeah, Brett, so I'm with Senator English and Senator Keith Agaran, and we need to get to a 10 o'clock meeting ourselves. So I just wanted to briefly say I have been talking about what we've been doing to try and pilot Kauai's school district. We actually had a request from Superintendent Arakaki to work with the 5 charter schools as well. They've always partnered with them. So we're close to $500,000 that we have been able to secure. We're going to first start with the distance training for, distance teaching training for teachers in all of the schools, whether it's 2 or 3, so they can become trainers. We're going to use Chaminade. I guess they were just recently completing the training for all of their instructors, so we're working with their education department to get this done. Mel is in the process of doing some costing, and his questions regarding coverage is to try to figure out how to get the hotspots. He's been in touch with Mike DeHelig and the IT person from the county to understand how they're deploying their CARES money and that 1.5 million of upgrades to make sure that we can get as much access to our students as possible. And then Senator English will give a brief, update on reopening on Monday. And then Senator Keith Agaran will talk a little bit about deploying the $600+ million out of the CARES Fund, since he's the vice chair of WAM. And then we're going to politely leave the meeting and say aloha to everybody, and we'll see you next week.
Thank you. So good morning, everybody. The legislature, as you know, has convened on Monday We are in session until July 10th, and then we will adjourn sine die. So that means we're going to finally end the normal session of the legislature, that the one that usually ends in the beginning part of May. So, with that, it means that all bills that have not moved or been worked on are dead, and they do not move on. And if we do come back in special session, it would be to consider specific bills that are introduced in that session, or at the call of the governor or 2/3 of the legislature. So with that said, we have a number of key bills that are moving ahead to deal with a whole bunch of things, and Senator Agaran will cover that. But our schedule is very condensed. So Thursday.
Yep.
Thursday is what's called lateral, which means the bills that are in the first committees have to be in the second committees. For those of you that follow the legislature, you know that this is usually weeks apart, and here it's days apart. We've had conference committees already yesterday. That means the House and Senate have conferenced on bills to put them into finalized form. We have been using technology, so the Senate has started, for example, yesterday Senator Lorraine Inoue did a Zoom meeting that was then put on Facebook Live and YouTube, and it's still up there, with the PUC, talking about the Young Brothers or the movement of goods between islands and explaining the very technical parts of the bill. I think Roz is going to do one today.
Yeah, well, Senator Baker may be doing one on a bill that she has about how much authority the Director of Health should have.
So we're starting to integrate, because you can only do written testimony. What we're trying to do is explain some of the more complicated bills up front in a Zoom conference with the correct administration people, so that at least there's something out there that people can go back to and people can watch. So we're starting to do that. And I'll let Senator Gil Keith Agaran explain the.
But before Senator Keith Agaran talks, Senator English brought up something I wasn't even thinking of. So when we came back in for the short session the last time with Olelo, we could only stream 2 meetings. And so luckily we were very limited in what we were going to do. And it was more about the Senate, besides moving the budget bills, having to do confirmations of various appointments to boards and commissions that we could make it work. In this iteration, we still have 2 live streams from Olelo. One is dedicated to the House, one to the Senate, which is what normally happens in our regular sessions. But we did expand our bandwidth capabilities, so both the House and the Senate are able to at least live stream the other meetings, but it is written testimony only. We are looking, as the Senate at least, to come back to confirm 10 judges, and after September, probably after the election in November, we have another 10 judges it appears we would be confirming, including replacement to the Supreme Court for Justice Pollack, who is turning 70, I believe, next month, and will be termed out from the Supreme Court. And it is our hope that when we get to that next session, we will have completed the upgrades we need to then take live testimony, when we come back in. And since it's specifically for judges, it would be a good test for us to see what our capabilities are. And then if it all works out, it's our hope to have that capability when we start regular session next January. And besides initially worrying about Neighbor Island participation, the cost of Neighbor Island participation, if in fact COVID-19 is around for a while, we do have people who testify at the Capitol who are over 60 or 65 years of age, or who have underlying health conditions, and they may have some concern about personal health and safety. They may want to practice social distancing. So we're very aware that it's not just about access anymore, but certainly it's about personal health and safety, and still ensuring that people can testify without putting their health at risk. So with that, I'll turn it over to Senator Keith Agaran.
Yeah, and I'll be very brief. I just happened to be sitting on the conference committees that met yesterday, including the conference that actually allocated the remainder of the CARES money. So we had about $650 million to allocate out. About 500 million went towards programs that were helping the people who are still unemployed, and so about 230 million, in fact, was to fund an additional $100 a week to replace the $600 a week that's going to be expiring at the end of the month. I mean, it's not the same, but it's still going to be a little bit more than they would get under the usual program. We also put in money for a number of important programs, such as more money for mental health, because we know that's an issue out there. There is a small little piece, I think, that might be valuable for some of the DOE people that are out there, and that's $2 million is going towards helping the people, the students who just graduated in 2020 with transitional help, whatever services they might need to make sure that a semester without any in-person schooling didn't leave them behind. Key for this group, I think, is the fact that we also allocate about $51 million to DBED, and the governor has another about $40 to $45 million at his discretion to use for economic recovery. So, it might behoove everybody to look at whether some of that money could be used directly for all the things that you've been talking about over the last couple of weeks, whether it's infrastructure, whether it's additional equipment, whether it's getting out information. As the president and the majority leader said, this is a very truncated process for the end of the session. And so we won't know until Friday, what bills are still floating out there. I mean, we usually let the chairs decide what their priorities are, and then we'll see what happens when it gets to the floor. And then next week, Ways and Means and Finance will probably be going over the final bills to see which ones actually come out at the end. Anything else?
Nope. Go ahead. You want to talk about rent subsidy?
Oh yeah, sure. And then there's also money in the bill that we passed out for rent subsidies, both from HHFDC and also at the Public Housing Authority to help with renters. And we're hoping that that's the money that's allocated has been estimated, I think, through UHERO to help about 34,000 households. That's the goal.
Okay, well, we're zooming off to another Zoom, so we'll see you next week.
No,
Thank
thanks a
you.
lot, Senator,
Thank you very much.
for that update.
Yeah,
Thanks
thank
a
you.
lot. And we'll see you guys next week.
Good to hear
So,
we could potentially leverage
I think what you're hearing is that, and I brought this up before, I mean, if our projects are fairly well crafted and what it is that we're asking for in terms of, maybe some appropriation, maybe some monies that could be made available, now's the time to kind of get that together, because what is going to be asked is, okay, so what's the project, how much are they asking for, and what's the impact to economic recovery? And so if those are well articulated, then we have a chance to get it to the respective groups here. And I'll be honest, I'm not one of those that are able to actually access the monies. There's something like $36 million going into BDSD, which is the Business Development group, which is headed by Dennis Ling. I have access to them. I can talk to them. I can find out how they envision, using the money. Another 15 million went to HTDC, which is the Hawaii Technology Development Corporation. And when it was described, it was primarily for manufacturing and creating sort of jobs around developing PPE, or personal protective equipment. So it has a certain specification around it. But again, if if you folks are working on something that could potentially be a project that gets funded, and I can interface between your project and them, and maybe we can get some money made available. And the same thing with the governor's money, right? I mean, it's all about convincing the governor that any of these projects should get funded. So if you can help me out, I'm certainly happy to carry the message forward. I did want to say something to Sandy before we go off the topic of Maui County, and that is, I know that I think Maui County is working on a Wi-Fi project, and just a heads up that County of Hawaii County, they had a project to do Wi-Fi on public infrastructure, and there was a pretty big turnout against any kind of Wi-Fi. And this is the same sort of anti-5G group that is out there. So, you want to be aware of that. And another thing that you might, sort of just be aware of is the fact that, the bill 2527 doesn't have anything to do with 5G. I mean, it's all about a broadband infrastructure program. And if you look at the testimony, there's 160 pages of anti-5G testimony. So that's something that, obviously, we've had some discussions about that on the call. We've got carriers on the call. We have AT&T, Verizon, T-Mobile. We have, Hawaiian Telcom and Charter. I mean, if we want to try to get deployment of some of this technology, we just have to be aware of how do we work through the opposition. And I'll tell you something, they're really good at mobilizing. So I'll leave it at that.
Bert, thank you. We actually did deal with that a little bit. They explained to them that, we're using 802.11, standards Wi-Fi that you have in your household type of activity for the Spectrum Wi-Fi, and then 4G for the mobile broadband that we're doing right now. So they did address the 5G with us. We've been bombarded, same thing with testimony, and they've been wanting us to provide some kind of restriction or regulation to 5G, and from what we review with our attorneys and all that is not possible what they want. So we've been kind of just leaving it at that. But yes, they're definitely a vocal group, and somebody that we can't ignore for sure. So we just address it as it comes up.
Yeah. Okay. Any other questions on this topic before we move on? So, the next topic, I was going to talk a little bit about telework, and that's a very, very interesting and a lot of interest on our part, DBED, to sort of look at telework and remote work as a area to create, the environment that encourages that. And the connection with broadband, obviously, is that a lot of the workers that would be teleworking would require broadband. So it's part of the application suite that we sort of convene this call on, whether it be telework, telehealth, or distance education. So telework is something that I'm actively convening some discussions about, but I don't want to spend any more time on it. I'll talk about it next week. I wanted to yield my time to Brooke, who the DOE just released their survey of a lot of the parents, teachers, and principals, and maybe he can give us some highlights on the results of that survey, which is actually up on the web now. And I did ask Brooke, because I know there's another question to me about some appropriate questions that they could ask their communities that would give a good indication of, internet connectivity. So I think he's looking for some of those questions for me. But Brooke, you want to go ahead and, share about the survey?
Sure. So I put actually two links in the chat. One is to the report that summarized the survey results. We've also got a dashboard, and I'll add that to the chat as well. But the other thing I put in is a brief document describing at a high level all the things we're doing in terms of digital transformation across the DOE. So I've alluded to a lot of the projects in previous meetings, and this is kind of summarizing it, but also kind of outlines on the second page of it the kinds of things that we're looking for extending partnership, whether with the legislature, with many of the organizations that are on here, kind of helps spell out where we're going in terms of that. As far as the survey goes, we had 3 different surveys that we've conducted. The preliminary report focuses on 2 of them. So the 3 were one, targeting secondary students, another targeting teachers, and the last one that isn't detailed yet because we're still working through the results, but we have some preliminary data from that we're actually acting on already, is principals. For both secondary students and teachers, the survey was not mandatory. Clearly, we can't make a student survey mandatory. We didn't make it mandatory for the teachers either. For the principals, we did make it mandatory, so we got comprehensive data from that. That being said, we still got a pretty good turnout from the secondary students and a great return rate from the teachers as well. I'm not going to go through all the numbers. You guys can read them all. You know, in contrast to some of the other districts and the challenges they've faced, while it wasn't that there weren't challenges with distance learning in the past quarter, there is some engagement, some indication that we did get some good work moving forward, and I'll let you go through all those results. As far as the principal results, that's the data that has been asked. Again, the full report's being prepared for that, but it includes which schools have sufficient devices to serve the needs of their students, whatever their model is for this coming school year, whether it's fully in person. We have to go back to a fully distance environment because COVID is resurging or something to that effect, or a blended model where we're doing a little bit of both in order to both keep students safe as well as give them a better, more engaged educational experience. So we're using that data actually to prepare another round of device purchases to help close the digital gap and make sure that students that need access, device, network access, which of course we've been talking about a lot here, as well as the management to ensure that it's safe and secure, that's in place, and we should be having some concrete results for that very soon. It'll be analogous to what we already did for summer school, so we're building on that and extending it even further, because of course when we're in the full school year, we'll have a lot more in place. At this point, we now have multiple mobile hubs that are working around the state. Project Yes that I mentioned last week, where we're partnering with Roberts Bus to provide primarily special education services, but also the mobile hubs are showing up out in the communities where we're just providing roaming Wi-Fi basically on a predictable schedule. A lot like the Wi-Fi on wheels, but we've got it on multiple islands, multiple locations, and looking at how feasible it is to scale that out even bigger. We've been deploying thousands of devices, thousands of MiFis, getting those configured, getting those secure, because they are for student use. So there's a lot of activity that we're building on these results. Again, we're using that data to help inform that digital transformation and the kinds of things that we're trying to do. This also comes back to telework as well as distance education, because that's part of what we expect to be part of the permanent environment for the department going forward. Those people that can do work distance, there will be support to do them. So that's kind of a high level summary of some of the stuff that we've got. open to questions, or we can do follow-ups, because I know we are getting close to the end of the time for the meeting today.
Mr. Connor,
Mm-hmm.
Bill Sides out in Hana. I'm trying to get together with somebody from the school district, either Mr. Ball or whoever, to figure out how we can best serve these outlying communities like KNI and Kipahulu and places like that, where a mobile unit would be too far for it to travel, and looking at having a fixed place that the people who are not directly connected could go to. Who would be the best person to look at it from the technological side and also the educational side to address how to set it up out there?
Yep. So so certainly my team and Casball's team work together on addressing those kinds of concerns. When you're talking about students having network access at home, that's where you've obviously got a lot of interaction with the student. That's something that schools really need to be actively participating in. So that's Casball's team. But in terms of provisioning the network access, that's something that my team is handling. The part of the way that my team is structured is each complex area has a dedicated person from my team that helps serve as the gateway to all the technology resources. The person that does that for HANA is Ross Uedoi, who works hand in hand with Casball's team on a regular basis. So Ross covers the so-called canoe complex, all the locations that Lindsay cited when he introduced himself. Each complex area has their own person that does that.
Can I ask a question, Brooke? This is Sherry.
Sure.
Regarding the CARES money, I understand that you did purchase some devices for the summer program, but I'm just curious
Correct.
to know if you're purchasing more hardware for the new year, and if they're all going to be new devices, because we have partners like Hawaii Hope on the line, and they do refurbished computers. It would be really great if we could support local nonprofits.
Mm-hmm. So we are planning an additional purchase. It's not a comprehensive purchase of device for every student. It's focusing on the ones that have an economic need. So looking at data such as students on free and reduced lunch as an indicator. That's the proxy that we use for that. As I think we've discussed before, we're focused on getting something to the student. Hawaiian Hope is focused on a slightly different mission, which is getting it directly to the family. And certainly if there was an indication that the family had access to sufficient devices, then the schools would not be distributing that to that family. They'd be distributing it to a different family that had need. So that's something that we, I think, can continue to work hand in hand on.
Okay, is Curtis on the line? Is that true, Curtis?
There he is.
I'm here. Sorry. So I'm sorry. What true?
Brooks just said that your organization works with families and not with organizations, so it wouldn't be a alignment because you are mostly distributing your refurbished devices to families. Is that correct? Or do you also work with organizations?
Well, no, we do work with organizations as well. I mean, we if somebody's interested in acquiring a whole bunch of equipment from us, we can do that. I mean, we've done projects with different organizations that we can do. I mean, I think when Brooke says that we're working directly with the families, is that our when families are requesting equipment, we can provide it to them. But we have worked with groups that they want to like blanket a community. We can do that type of arrangement as well. But yeah, we haven't done anything with a particular the DOE or anything like that. I'd love to.
Well, I think what Brooke is saying too is that if Brooke's program is getting computers to the students, and your program is getting it to the parents, you just want to make sure that that particular family isn't getting one from the DOE and one from Hawaiian Hope. So there just needs to be that level of coordination.
I mean, it would just seem
Yeah,
that
and that makes sense.
it's a cost factor, because I think a new device is always going to be more expensive than a refurbished one. So
you
want to make your dollar stretch as much as possible. That's all. Thank you.
Yeah. So
okay.
I mean, in respect, I think if we're covering for the whole family, I mean, our intention is to give a computer to the household. So, yes, I'm expecting they would be using it for education as well, but we're not going to restrict it that only the kids can use it. I mean, I'm not sure.
And I think one of the things the superintendent pointed out is we're not restricting devices that we distribute through the schools to only be used for education. That came up in the telehealth discussions that we had as well. I think that part of the point that I'm making is that my understanding, Curtis, is that Hawaiian Hope traditionally has done donations to the family directly, as opposed to donating to an organization like the Hawaii State Department of Education. If I misunderstood that, and you guys are in a position to directly donate to the department as a donation so that we've got the procurement rules lined up, then absolutely we'll take advantage of that. That being said, in terms of cost, we're absolutely being cost conscious. Part of why we're doing these purchases in a central way is to get more substantial discounts from the vendors, which you can get in bulk that you can't get when a school does that purchase individually. And also because in the current environment, when looking at the supply chains, you need to have a substantial purchase to be able to get any attention from the vendors in terms of making sure that you're going to get devices, because everybody is looking for devices right now.
Yeah,
so I really appreciate this conversation. I did want to and I would encourage more discussion perhaps offline. I do want to give Stacey Aldridge a chance, because Stacey's been invited to the call for, I don't know, the last 10 to 12 weeks, and this is the first time she's actually been on. And Stacey is our chief public librarian, and she's been one of the people I wanted to bring on and talk a little bit about digital literacy and digital equity, and if there's ways that the library could be involved with helping to kind of promote that programmatic side of making sure that people they may have broadband, may have a computer, and now how do we bridge the knowledge gap for sort of digital equity and digital literacy. So Stacey, I'm putting you on the spot.
Aloha, thank you for inviting me to join this great group. It's actually my second time. I'm sorry.
Oh, okay, sorry.
I think we're all partners in this, and I think the libraries play a crucial partner in helping people get connectivity. There's a lot of hard work going on to get devices into the hands of families and students. But again, that connectivity is always an issue. And Y and I, we did a project to try to make sure that students who were getting devices but didn't have internet could get library cards or clean their library cards off so they could use the Wi-Fi at the library. So we're really trying to boost our Wi-Fi in our libraries so that students or anyone who has a device but still needs connectivity or a faster connectivity can come to the library. We also do a lot of hands-on, which is a little bit different. We're trying to figure out in a socially distanced way to do just basic digital literacy. There are a lot of people who may lose a job and they've never had to use a computer before, and we have to walk them through the very basics of getting online, writing a resume online, and then helping them apply for jobs online. And our librarians walk people through that. So there's a couple of things we're looking at. One, we're in the process of purchasing Chromebook labs for each of our libraries so that they could do distanced kinds of training where everybody would get a laptop, join on a Wi-Fi, and we could do some digital learning sessions. We're also, I think I'd mentioned Grow with Google has been a partner with us. They were here in January, and we're hoping to do more sessions virtual and at some point socially distanced to help people understand the digital resources that are available through Grow with Google for small businesses and digital literacy. So I think it's great to have, make sure we get devices and we make sure we have connectivity. And I think we also have to make sure that people have the skill sets, because I think sometimes we assume that even the young really have the skill sets, and there are gaps. There are definitely digital literacy gaps. So we're working on those things, and then we're also working on trying to get a program started with Oceanit, with putting sensors in our libraries just to help count people, no facial recognition, help us understand our building spaces so that we can make them more safe and healthy for people. And with the software that comes with the sensors, we're hoping to build some programs for students around the state so that they have access to learning more about AI and also data, how to deal with data. So again, the library is this place of opportunity, and we're excited to be at the table with everybody and work together. Thank you, Bert.
Yeah, no, thanks, Stacey. And again, you know, I did have digital literacy and digital equity on our agenda, and I'm happy to hear all the projects you're working on, and if you got time to join us and keep us updated. You know, I think there's others on the call that would probably like to jump on board what you guys are doing over at the library. So, you know, the thing that I wanted to also kind of emphasize before we leave is that, you know, when these grant programs, or when, you know, the monies that DBED is receiving, what I can do is I can see if I can get the program manager for those grants. Like maybe I'll get Len, once Len kind of figures out how he wants to scope out the details of that grant program, I'll have them come on the call and share, you know, what the specifications are. Maybe same thing with Dennis Lin guys. But in the meantime, you know, definitely start thinking about how your plan might, or your project might get some funding, and the more you can help me sell it, the more chance that we might have to actually getting some money. So just kind of keep that in the back of your mind.
Hey Bert, that would be just a comment around getting the folks from DBED on. I think that would be a great idea, because I do remember Senator Kochi or his team mentioning the $51 million that was going to DBED, and the recommendation for the Hui to reach out to them. You know, so understanding the nature of the opportunity is helpful, you know, to help people kind of put those plans together.
Right.
Curious about that.
Yeah. So I'll definitely, you know, do that and try to help bridge that gap. You know, we're at the 10:30 mark, and again, I appreciate everybody who's participated. And you know, if you have to drop off, you know, after an hour, I totally understand everybody's busy schedule. You know, Jeannie, you have any final comments?
No, I don't. Another really, really good discussion. So thank you.
Chris?
No, I thank you everyone for participating. And it was just, it's a lot of information to capture and kind of cull together. But as we look forward to the next legislative session, you know, I'm just looking forward to further dialogue on how we can really kind of support a coordinated effort for broadband. Thank you, everyone.
Thanks. Again, you know, we're keeping this weekly call going, and we'll be presenting all the, you know, sort of the fluid things that are happening, especially on the ledge side, as well as, you know, in terms of broadband. So there's never a dull moment in terms of you know, sharing some information. So for me and Jeannie and Chris, I want to make sure that you guys all stay safe and be able to come back next week and join us on the Hui call. So until then, of course, the call is going to be on July 1st. But until then, you guys all stay safe and you guys all stay awesome. Thanks a lot.
So,
Thank you.
Thanks, Bert. Thanks, Jeannie. Thanks, everyone.
You know, when I came back, I think I was able to start the recording back up, but I might have lost the first part of that recording because I think what happened was my computer might have crashed. At least it crashed the internet connection, so I had to actually reboot to get back on.
You don't think it did an autosave?
Not on the video, because usually it does a conversion.
Bert, are you on two different devices at the same time? Is that why it transferred over to the phone?
Well, yeah. I mean, I'm always on audio with my phone, but when my computer died, you know, I still had the audio part for my phone, but then it did, you know, I had to end up rebooting in order to get back in on the video side.
Oh, okay. So you're using your phone for the